Welcome back to the Power Hour. Thank you for joining us today. We are in the second hour of the Power Hour, officially 8 minutes after the hour. And we have one of GCN Live's own talk show hosts joining us today, Ben Fuchs. Ben Fuchs is a pharmacist. I'm going to talk to him a little bit about his background in just a second. But my interest and my selfish interest is I want to know about these drugs, the antipsychotics, the SSRI drugs, the sleep drugs. How in the world can they have so much control over people? That's kind of what I want to know. Ben Fuchs, thank you so much. It's an honor to have you join us at the Power Hour today.
It's an honor to be here, Joyce. Thank you. I'm a big fan of your work.
Oh, you're so kind. You're so kind. Well, likewise. Where did you go to pharmaceutical school?
I went to pharmacy school at the University of Colorado in Boulder, School of Pharmacy. Graduated went from 1981 to 1986.
And listeners, I told him when I talked to him first on the phone, my father always had a rule. My father had a chain of drugstores, and he always said, whatever you do, be nice to the pharmacist, because heaven forbid they quit. The whole store has to shut down, doesn't it?
Well, you know, it's funny because back in the glory days of pharmacists, there was a lot more, or pharmacy, there was a lot more respect for the pharmacist than there is today, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. Pharmacists, well, you know, as a nurse, you know that pharmacists work hand in hand with physicians dispensing the medication. Everybody knows that, but what a lot of folks don't recognize is that when it comes to medication, we know a heck of a lot more about how these things work than pretty much anybody in the healthcare field, and that's why the most trusted profession every year, among the most trusted profession, top 2 or 3, is always going to be the pharmacist. We're trained in helping people understand how to use these medications, in other words, being a liaison between the high-tech world of chemistry and the layperson. That's why when you go to the pharmacist, you ask them about not just about medications, you ask them about nutrition, you ask them about skincare, pretty much anything that has to do with chemistry interfacing with the body. That's the expertise of the pharmacist, including food, by the way.
Yes. Now, well, there's so many things we could go into, but I do want you to talk about what the old-time pharmacist was like versus the one today that just counts out pills on this little plastic grid.
Yeah, count, pour, lick, and stick is what we call it in pharmacy school.
Wait a minute, say that again?
Count, pour, lick, and stick. Now, of course, we don't lick and stick anymore, but we do a lot of counting and pouring. You know, it's funny, there's a lot of angry pharmacists and frustrated pharmacists because when pharmacy students first go to school, they go to school usually because they love chemistry, usually because they want to be involved in healthcare, and they want to help people. But in the age of Walmart and Kmart and Target and fast food pharmacy, drive-through pharmacy, what pharmacists have become is glorified short-order cooks, just kind of putting pills in the bottle and dispensing it and ringing up people's toilet paper and toothpaste. And that's unfortunate because it's a time-honored profession. We do study a lot about chemistry. And you know what? At the end of the day, Joyce, we are chemical beings. The human body runs on chemistry, and this is really the bottom line when it comes to drugs, and it's why I hate prescription drugs. And that's why I stopped being even though I own a pharmacy, and I'll tell you a little bit about what I do. Personally, I own a pharmacy, but there's no drugs in my pharmacy because
what?
I hate
that is so un-American. What?
It's a drugless pharmacy because, as I say, we're chemical beings, and you interface medicinally with pharmacology in the world of pharmacy at your peril. You play around with your body's biochemistry using prescription drugs at your peril. You cannot mess around with your chemistry, not expect to have toxicities and side effects. And this idea of drugging the body into health is absolute stupidity. It's crazy. It's asinine on the face of it. You can't drug yourself into health. And this is why, Joyce, there is not a single drug on planet Earth that can cure any disease. They are strictly, at best you can kill bacteria. The only kind of drug I would ever use is an antibiotic. If I had some kind of bacterial infection, it would have to be a severe bacterial infection to kill bacteria. Other than that, prescription drugs, pharmacology is designed to block and to inhibit and to stop things from happening. And I say this on my radio program all the time. All disease is cell disease. At the point of the disease, a cell is not doing what it should be doing. It's as simple as that. And you can't take a prescription drug and expect a cell to change its status from sick to healthy. What you can do is you can block symptoms, or inhibit things from happening so that it doesn't look like there's any kind of biochemical breakdown in the body. But indeed, there is absolutely no way a cell is going to take a prescription drug, use that prescription drug to correct something that it's doing wrong. Cells are not stupid. The realm of a cell is the realm of God. It's the divine realm. And the only thing that a cell will do, will take in, are things that it is mandated to take in by the divine force. That is oxygen, nutrients, water, and the basics. And you know what? If you want to be healthy, those are the things that you got to give yourself. The idea that you can go to a pharmacy or a doctor and get a prescription and then fill it at a pharmacy and then get better and then get healthier is absolute stupidity, and it's a sign of this health miasma, this health trance that 300 million Americans are under.
Okay, let me stop you there, because do you all realize you are having a pharmacist tell you he doesn't believe in drugs? You're having a pharmacist tell you they don't do any good. And the things that do work, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but when you take a chemical into your body, you are making more drastic changes than you can imagine. I mean, the
Joyce.
example of Ambien or the example of Fosamax.
Vioxx, Celebrex, absolutely. Here's the thing,
okay.
Joyce, here's the thing. You have a poison control center in your body, right? You have a enzyme system in your liver that is specifically designed by the divine force to detoxify poisons, called phase 1, phase 2 detoxification, okay? It's specifically designed to detoxify poisons. Well, guess what? When you take a prescription drug, you activate that poison control system. Now that poison control system has to clear out that prescription drug using all of its poison control strategies, and now you have less wherewithal for your body to be handled, for your body to handle all of the other stresses in the body, all of the other stresses of life. So you have now put a extra burden on an already stressed out system because you're taking a prescription drug because you're presumably sick. So by taking a prescription drug, now you have added to the burden of stress and detoxification to an already compromised body. Now, if you're on multiple medications, which most people are, or many people are, you can increase that stress exponentially. If you take that prescription drug for long periods of time, say for months or years or your life, again, you've increased that stress response and you've put an added burden on the body's poison control system exponentially. And this is the problem. If you think you can take a prescription drug and get better, not only can you not get better, but because of this added burden on the body, your likelihood of getting sicker increases dramatically. So not only do prescription drugs not work, they put a further burden on the body that increases the likelihood of extra disease.
All right, then let's take a person who we want to talk to you about the drugs that these children are taking. Let's talk about the body burden that is put on them, or the toxic burden that is put on them when you start giving them some of these classes of drugs. First of all, separate the classes of drugs that these children are being fed today.
Well, there's all kinds of drugs that kids are on, but the most notorious, the biggest problem ones are the mental drugs. I'll tell you about another drug here in a second, but these drugs that affect the brain. You've got a developing nervous system, you've got a developing brain, and now you want to put a poison into the body, something that is going to affect the very system that you want to have grow and develop in a child. How can you not have a problem? It's always shocking to me when we are surprised at toxicities, when we're surprised at side effects, when we're putting materials into the body that are specifically designed to shut down, to inhibit, to block, and to literally, not metaphorically, to literally poison the system. So to me, the biggest problem with drugs in children are, and they're all problematic, but the biggest ones are drugs that affect the central nervous system and specifically the brain. And that is obviously these SSRIs and these antidepressants. And the bottom line here, Joyce, is we're not sick. We're starving. How the heck can anybody expect a human being to subsist on McDonald's and high fructose corn syrup and fast food and processed foods and not have some kind of negative effects, especially on fast-moving systems? The four fastest-moving systems in the body are the central nervous system, the brain, the digestive system, the skin, and the digestive system,
respiratory.
No. There's one more. The cardiovascular system. These are the 4 fastest moving systems in the body. The cardiovascular system, the central nervous system, the skin, and the digestive system. And these are the systems that are singularly affected, that are most importantly affected by prescription drugs, number 1, and by nutritional deficiencies, number 2. You can pretty much, there's a proportional relationship, a directly proportional relationship to deficiencies in nutrients and breakdowns in the body. The more deficient you are in nutrition, the more breakdown you're going to have in the body. And if you wanted to systematically destroy a culture, you couldn't do a better job than to have them subsist on processed grains and processed sugars and processed foods, and that's basically what we're doing in this country.
Okay.
You know, Joyce, Joyce, let me just say one last thing. We have more medical professionals per capita in this country than anywhere in the world, anywhere in the history of the world. We spend more money per capita on health care in this country, and we are the sickest culture ever in the history of mankind. Just that alone, those 2 points alone should tell you what an abject failure this medical model is, and this medical trance that we're all into has to end if we're going to get healthy.
Okay, let's go back and use these children, these school children that are eating the
Prozac and
the foods, the junk foods that are eating
right.
the junk foods, the high fructose corn syrup, etc. Okay, first of all, they got that going against them.
Right.
Then they're given something like this drug that's now being called the drug that was given to Adam Lanza, and we'll talk about that after this break. A drug called Fanapt. We'll talk about this after the break. What do these do to these children, ladies and gentlemen? How can we alter this? We'll be back. 4-minute break. Joyce Riley with Pharmacist Ben Fuchs. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Power Hour. Thank you for joining us, caring about your world, doing the next right and honorable thing. And that means treating your body like a temple and not a dumpster. Joining us today at 24 minutes after the hour is Pharmacist Ben Fuchs. Y'all don't know what it takes to become a pharmacist. I could not have been one. The amount of chemistry that it requires and the amount of scholarship that it requires to become a pharmacist is really difficult. It's a lot more than a nurse. I mean, anybody who's a pharmacist could be a physician because of the amount of education that they require. However, moving into the subject today, I want to talk with him directly about these drugs that are being utilized literally to control. We don't think that. We think it's helping them. But as an example, this drug called Fanapt.
Right.
And the psychiatric effects include restlessness, aggression, delusion, hostility, decreased libido, paranoia, confusional state, mania, mood swings, panic attack, impulsive control behavior or disorder, and major depression. You are feeding that to a 20-year-old who has Asperger's syndrome? What would that do to a child like that? What could it do, Ben?
Joyce, this is craziness of the highest degree. And by the way, this new drug, Fanapt, is actually a serotonin antagonist. It's a blocker of serotonin, and it's used in the same way that the so-called serotonin reuptake inhibitors are used. And this is really very important for people to understand. There's a lot of mythology around serotonin and the idea that serotonin is some kind of feel-good, happy hormone. I mean, haven't you heard this, that, serotonin helps you feel good, and you got to increase your serotonin levels, and if you have low serotonin, you're going to get depressed. Now, as it turns out, this Fanapt drug belies that craziness, because Fanapt is actually a serotonin antagonist. It's a blocker of serotonin. The point being, serotonin is a very, very misunderstood substance. In fact, serotonin is associated with, elevated serotonin is associated with something called serotonin syndrome, whose symptoms include violent behavior, suicidal ideation, aggressiveness, belligerence, jitteriness, hypervigilance, all of the things that are associated with the stress response. So getting back to what you were talking about before about giving these kids drugs, what we're giving our kids when we give them these antipsychotic medications are drugs that increase the stress response, increase violent behavior, increase belligerence, increase all of the things that we're seeing increased in children, and as related causally to these violent outbreaks and school shootings and all the things that are going on. Now, this is kind of unusual with this kid with was it Asperger's syndrome or autism?
Correct.
That he had?
Asperger's syndrome.
As you're giving this kid with Asperger's syndrome an antipsychotic medication, you're giving a kid who's already imbalanced mentally an antipsychotic medication. Of course you're going to be playing with fire. And by the way, Joyce, when I graduated pharmacy school, the first job I had was working as a psychiatric pharmacist. So I have a lot of understanding. That's right. And let me tell you something. When you go into these hospitals, these psychiatric hospitals, and the doctors put your kids or your family or you on medications, you think they know what they're doing with these medications? I used to sit in meetings with these doctors, and they'd be saying, well, I think maybe we should throw another 5 milligrams of stelazine in here, and then maybe we'll drop the Mellaril down a little bit, and then we'll throw a little help. You know what I'm talking about? They don't know what the heck they're doing. They're just playing around and throwing a little this in and throwing a little of that in. And this is the central nervous system and the brain that we're talking about. It's one thing, Joyce, to take a prescription drug that messes up your digestive tract or that plays around with your thyroid or plays around with your bone. That's one thing, and that's bad enough. But to take a prescription drug that tweaks around and jury rigs a system that's as intricate and as complicated and as absolutely critically important as the central nervous system and the brain is craziness, absolute craziness. And I'm telling you, Joyce, if you are, for parents out there to allow a physician or anybody to medicate their children is just the height of foolishness, especially considering the fact that by manipulating food and by playing with the diet and by adding nutritional supplements, you could do a world of good for the central nervous system, for the brain, as well as for the other fast-moving systems, the circulatory system, the digestive system, and the skin.
Okay, now I want to get to that issue of what to do in the positive side of this in just a second. However, every parent that has a child on Ritalin is probably wondering, what are you saying right now? Because it makes him calm down. It makes him go to school easier. Everything is fine.
At what cost? At what cost, though, Joyce?
But what does, let's say, a drug called Ritalin, what does that do to that child's nervous system?
Well, that's a very interesting. Ritalin is a very fascinating drug. These drugs they call nootropic agents, so-called learning aids. With children, there's a paradoxical effect that occurs with these uppers, these speed-like drugs like Ritalin and methamphetamine, or not methamphetamine, dextroamphetamine, dexedrine. Of speed type of drugs. For adults, when they take a speed type of drug, they get jittery. But when a kid takes a speed type of drug, it tends to calm them down and allows them to focus. However...
Okay. All right, we got a break. We'll be right back. 3-minute break. Then Ben Fuchs. More of him. Welcome back to Power Hour. Thanks for joining us. I got to tell you, there's nobody I'd like to hear from more than Ben Fuchs right now, because he's saying everything that is so right. I cannot believe it. It's like too good to be true. We're talking about the drugs affecting the children. Now, we're going to get into what to do right for the body so you don't have these problems in the first place in just a little bit. But we're talking now about Ritalin. All right, Ben, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your sharing this with people. And I hope people will get the CD. It's $5 at the Power Hour of Ben. And please get it out to the people that you know. Please get it out to the people that you know that have put their children on these drugs, that need to get them off and need to have them on something that is going to do the right thing for them. All right, you give a child Ritalin. You say it has a different effect on children. I've taken Ritalin. Man, I wish it was legal. I love it. I would take it every day. I can clean my house in 30 minutes. Right. I love it. But what does it do to children?
With children, there's a paradox. It's called the paradoxical effect, meaning that children have an opposite effect. They don't get high, they don't get jittery, they don't get anxious, although sometimes they can. But for most kids, it tends to calm them down. It tends to allow them to focus. And what you're talking about, this idea of feeling like you could clean up the house, also applies to the brain. Ritalin is technically classified as a nootropic agent. So in addition to making you have a lot of energy, it also allows you to learn better and it allows you to focus. And so that's why they give it to kids. Great. The problem is, Joyce, You're taking a poison. Yes, you may have this kind of effect of calming your kid down, and you may be able to focus, but it's a poison. It has to be broken down by the body's poison control system, and there is toxicity, and there are side effects. You can't say, well, I take the Ritalin and my kid calms down, or I'm giving my kid the Ritalin and my kid calms down, so it's good stuff. It doesn't work that way. There is going to be a biochemical price that the body has to pay. And the reason this is so important, and the reason I got into nutrition, is because we have an entire spectrum of chemical substances that can do exactly what Ritalin does with zero toxicity, with zero side effects, with only beneficial effects. And what's more, your kid's problem is not caused by a Ritalin deficiency, but indeed it is caused by a deficiency in this of these substances that form this spectrum of chemicals that we need to have in our body for optimum functioning. The body has developed over many millions of years to use these materials, and over the last 100, 150, 200 years, we've developed a food system that couldn't be better designed to eliminate these compounds from the foods. B vitamins, magnesium, tryptophans, amino acids, essential fats. These are all removed from the foods, and these are the substances that the brain needs to function. And when you give these things to the body, and you give these things to the central nervous system and the brain, not only do you get improvements, because indeed the problems in the first place were caused by deficiencies in these substances, but you get multiple benefits throughout the human system, the human body system.
Okay. Now let me take one other drug before we start moving to the positive side, and that is Ambien. Okay. This little pill, how could it be that bad? How can whatever is in that little tiny pill, I think it's a blue one, I'm not sure, but how can it make somebody go have sex with someone else they don't even know, drive a car to work at the White House, in Washington, D.C.,
right?
How can it make people do something they don't know they're doing?
Because we're chemical beings, and what you're doing is you're short-circuiting the body's chemistry, specifically with Ambien, the brain's chemistry. If anything exemplifies a biochemical electrical activity in the body, if any system exemplifies it, it is the brain, which means you can tweak it with just the tiniest amount of anything, really, but especially medications, especially drugs. So as a pharmacist, I can tell you, I'm not surprised by the craziness crazy things people do when they're on Ambien. You're playing around with the very essence of consciousness, which is how we operate in the world. And taking a drug that affects the brain is changing the way we perceive and the way our consciousness works. And you can't it's not a surprise to me. You shouldn't expect anything different. It's a little odd, and it's a little interesting, I have to say, some of the things people do on Ambien, but considering that everything we do is run by our brain, once you start playing around with your neurons, anything's possible.
But everybody takes it. I mean, come on. It's not that big a deal.
It's our culture. You know, this whole history of pharmacy and the history of drugs is very fascinating, because the golden age of drugs, first of all, we didn't really start to understand how to manipulate the brain and manipulate the body using pharmacy. There's a long history of pharmacy, but we didn't really understand what we're doing until the middle of the 19th century. So over the last 150 years, we've got 7 or 8 or 9 generations of Americans who are used to the idea that if you got a problem, you just take a medication, you just take a substance, you just take a drug. And we get now, over the last 25, 30 years, it's been rammed down our throats via commercials. You know, you didn't used to see commercials for medications on television. This is a recent phenomena.
No.
And so we get the idea that our drugs are like fast foods. They're like hamburgers. They're like little gifts. They come in little packages, and they're like little toys, and there's this whole idea that there's sort of like something pleasant about interfacing with medications and interfacing with drugs. They use cartoons now to advertise drugs. They have little funny drawings, so you don't even have to be intelligent to understand how your medication works. And there's this commodification of medicine that doesn't serve the general public, but it does serve the people who are making billions and even trillions of dollars off these substances. Joyce, do you know the profit margin on prescription drugs? How It's ungodly. Some of these prescription drugs go upwards of $20, $25, $30 a pill, and the bottle costs more than the medication that's in the pills. You're talking about trace amounts of chemicals selling for upwards of $1,000 more for 100 pills. You get maybe 1 gram of active chemical in.
Okay, now the idea that we've never seen a country so crazy that will allow people to take a drug, number one, that may give them a heart attack, and we already have that proof in a number of the drugs that are being used, that may have them go and, like we said, have sex with somebody they don't even know and not even remember it, eat every night and eat everything out of the refrigerator. But we allow that to happen. But then you've got a vitamin C, and they say, wait a minute, we need to limit the amount of vitamin C that you're getting.
Right. Now,
this is crazy.
Do you smell a rat anywhere?
Oh, my goodness. So, all right, now let's move to what can be done so we don't need all these things.
That's what I like to focus on. The human body is a healing system. Every time you cut yourself, Joyce, you are witness to this amazing healing process that you have to do nothing to access. It is on automatic. The body is designed to adjust itself. The ups get pulled down and the downs get pulled up. It's called homeostasis. When there's a break, that break is patched up without anybody having to think about it. Every time you eat a piece of food, the digestive system kicks in. You don't even have to think about it. You unfortunately interface with a poison. Your liver takes care of it. You don't have to think about it. But this system needs to have raw material in exactly the same fashion that your car isn't going anywhere without gasoline and oil. It's the same basic principle. The human machine is like any other kind of machine. It needs to have raw material to do its work, and if you don't give it the raw material, you cannot expect to have anything but sickness and breakdown. It's as simple as that. And I don't know why that should be such a complicated idea. I still run into people who say, well, I don't think it's that important to take your nutritional supplements and you don't have to worry about nutrition so much. I still hear people say that. I hear people say they go to the gym and they work out, and because they work out, they don't have to use nutrition or nutritional supplementation. Mm-hmm. Well, the fact of the matter is, Joyce and your listeners, if you are not taking care of your nutritional needs, and by nutritional needs I'm talking about diet number 1 and nutritional supplementation number 2, you cannot expect anything but breakdown and sickness and disease. And if you do have breakdown and sickness and disease, you can rest assured that you can backtrack it either to some problem in intake of nutrition via foods and supplements or in absorption of these substances through the digestive tract. And that's why the first thing you want to focus on, no matter what your health challenge is, I don't care if it's arthritis or acne or atherosclerosis or autism or anything else, the first system you need to focus on is the health and the wellness of the digestive system. When we come out of the womb, and I know you know this, Joyce, when when mammals and human beings are born, when they come out of the womb, they are born, because of our big heads, we're born premature, and the two systems that are most underdeveloped are the digestive system and the immune system, which, by the way, are like two peas in the pod. So we come out of the womb with a digestive tract that is compromised. And if we are not fed breast milk for long enough, and if our parents or our mother was not nutritionally competent herself, we come out of the womb not only deficient in or immature at the digestive tract and immune system level, but without the breast milk that has the peptides and the factors that grow and develop the digestive tract, now we have strike 2 against us in terms of our digestive wellness. And then if we start to participate in the standard American diet, as most Americans do with baby food and apple juice and McDonald's, now we have 3 strikes against us, and disease and breakdown cannot help but follow. And this is why, by the age of 12, many children have an immune system that is so clogged up that they can't even breathe anymore, and they have to have a surgical procedure to remove a hunk of it so that air can get through their airways. That's called a tonsillectomy. And as you probably know, Joyce, when an ENT doctor removes a tonsil, he has to be very careful, because that part of that lymphatic tissue that he's removing is so clogged and so pus-filled that if he touches it the wrong way, it'll pop like the biggest, ugliest zit you've ever seen in your life. And this all comes from breakdown in the digestive system. Now, the digestive system is your system for absorbing all of these nutrients. So we cannot help but begin to get sick. We cannot help but have degenerative disease and crises, and we cannot help but have mental health issues given this breakdown at the digestive system level, which is why no matter what your health issue is, especially if it's a psychological or mental health issue in your child, focus on digestive wellness. Number one, use digestive support nutrients. And number two, make sure you're eating correctly. And do not, I repeat, do not interface with this fast food, processed food model that seems to be available to us at every single corner in America.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now I want to ask you, of all the autism spectrum disorders and all the psychological deviations that children seem to have now or are being diagnosed with the DSM-5 regardless of what they have or not. Oh, that's another good one.
Yeah. Have you talked about the DSM?
Well, we've talked about it periodically, yes. But let me just ask you this. Can you take those children and do something for them nutritionally
within moments,
and bring them back to a normal status where they could sit in class?
Seconds, Joyce. Remember, the nervous system, the central nervous system, is burning through nutrients. It's the fastest moving, one of the 4 fastest moving systems in the body. It is burning through nutrients rapidly. You can create changes in brain health using nutrition, nutritional supplementation within seconds, Joyce. Something like a liquid nutritional drink within seconds can make a difference in a child. And the reverse is also true. You can create destructive symptoms in a child by just feeding them apple juice or feeding them Coca-Cola within seconds. Get your kid a glass of Coke, a full glass of Coke, and watch what happens. Within 60 seconds, they'll be bouncing off the walls. Yes, indeed, you can create positive changes or you can create negative changes almost instantaneously in a child's mental health. Almost instantaneously.
So, if you are to provide that appropriate diet versus, and I'm tired of hearing people talk about, oh, I don't have the money, I don't have this, I don't have the time, I want you to beat people up and say, look what you're doing to these children. They don't have any more chances. This is their chance today to have appropriate food and appropriate diet to give it the appropriate brain function, heart function, etc.
Start your child off. You want a quick, cheap thing to do? Start your child's day off with a couple of eggs. And make sure you're using butter or coconut oil in there. If you're going to fry the eggs, don't fry them too much. Or the ideal poached or soft-boiled or raw.
Okay,
and don't
why
give
do
them
they
toast.
say that? Why is that said? Have them poached or not to?
Because the eggs are extremely unstable. There's a lot of good stuff in eggs. And nutrition, whenever there's in food nutrition, the relationship between stability and potency is very interesting. The more potent and powerful a food is, the more unstable that food will be. And the more potent and active a nutritional supplement is, or a nutritional component is, the more unstable it will be. Fats are loaded with very important nutrients. Eggs are loaded with very important nutrients, especially good fats and fatty vitamins, and these substances are highly unstable. Eggs are also a very rich source of cholesterol, which, by the way, is another demonized and misunderstood biochemical, stupendously important for brain health. And cholesterol is also destroyed by heat, and actually you can create some toxic compounds when you heat cholesterol. So you want to make sure your eggs are not overheated. Ideally, the best way to do your eggs is raw eggs, and by the way, raw eggs taste quite delicious. You have to make sure your egg is fresh and there's no cracks in there.
And should be organic, correct?
And always organic, with everything organic. And then your eggs, ideally, by the way, chickens are not vegetarian, so you don't want to use vegetarian eggs. Now they have these genetically modified eggs where they have omega-3s put in there. Somehow they modify the chicken so they'll produce more omega-3 fats. I'm not sure how they do that. Actually, I don't know if that's a genetic modification. In any case, you want to look for real eggs, not vegetarian eggs that come from chickens who are cage-free and pecking at worms and eating animal protein. And give your child 2 or 3 eggs. Don't give them orange juice. Don't give them French toast. Don't give them cereal. Don't give him anything that's going to spike his blood sugar. Keep the child's blood sugar stable, and give him grounding protein. I used to have a friend who was a schizophrenic, And I would go in and he was an acquaintance, he wasn't a really friend, but I would see him every morning when I went and got my juice at the health food store here in Boulder. And this guy's name was Greg, and he was a schizophrenic, and every time I come in there, Greg would have a big old 64-ounce cup of Coca-Cola or some kind of soda that he was drinking, and he would be talking crazy and delusional, and they were giving him medication. Him and I would have these kind of conversations, and he was a smart guy, but he was a little bit crazy, and he would say things like, "Man, they give me this medication, and I want to get off the medication. I don't know how to do it." So one day I took Greg, and we took him over to the salad bar, and I got him a bunch of eggs, and I got him a bunch of spinach, and picked all these grounding kinds of foods, told him to eat it, and within moments, Greg's attitude had completely changed. Every morning, this became a little tradition, and I would buy him a little $5 salad for breakfast. He wasn't drinking his Coke. Within 2 weeks, Joyce, this guy was off all of his medication. He was a new person. He was he was like a normal human being again. And it was simply by changing the way he ate. Now, focusing on grounding foods and staying away from fake sugar, aspartame, and NutraSweet and Coca-Cola and all the crap that we're all eating, that Americans are all ingesting.
There's no cure for schizophrenia. You know that.
Please. That's craziness.
That is incredible. What a story.
If you know anybody out there who's a schizophrenic, get them on eggs and grounding foods and get them off anything that spikes his blood sugar. I have a great book in my bookcase called Insulin and Psychotherapy. They actually used to use insulin, which helps the body process sugar. They actually used to use it to treat mental disorders, including schizophrenia.
Yes. We'll be back after this 3-minute break. We're going to... Power Hour, 54 minutes after the hour. We're talking to pharmacist Ben Fuchs. If you listen to Genesis, you know he comes right on after the Power Hour. It makes it real easy for you to stay right there, listen to Ben Fuchs, tell your friends about him, and get them to listen to his show. Now, we're going to talk about, and of course everybody knows that Youngevity is the items that he has chosen that he thinks are the best to give to your children, to yourself, and to your animals. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But I have never heard the story, and I don't know how you got involved in Youngevity and why it is you think they're the best.
Well, I'll tell you what. It's a really interesting story, actually. I've been involved... Well, I graduated pharmacy school in 1986. I started to delve into the world of nutrition. The more I started work with nutrition, the more I saw, as I said earlier, that we're not sick. We're just starving. We need to have some basic nutrients. And I started dispensing nutrients in my pharmacy. I started to give essential fatty acids to people for their skin and for their menstrual cramps. And I started to give vitamin C to people for their immune system. I started to notice some dramatic results. And so I decided I was going to start to spread the word. So I would do these little talks in my lab, my pharmacy/laboratory. And then one day in early 1993, 1994, somewhere around there, I got a cassette tape in the mail. Dead doctors don't lie. I don't know if you ever got any of these.
Absolutely.
Tape, right? So I stuck it in my drawer. I didn't think of it. And I got another tape. And then I got another tape. And I kept getting these tapes. Dead doctors don't lie. And they were sending all these tapes out, apparently. And so I stuck the thing in there one day, and I listened to it. And I was just absolutely floored. This guy was saying everything that I knew was true, except he was saying it elegantly and eloquently and entertainingly. And he was a powerful speaker. And I was like, who is this guy? Of course, it was Dr. Joel Wallach. And I must have listened to that Dead Doctors Don't Lie tape probably 20 times. I started to incorporate a lot of that information into my talks. And I just became a really big fan of this guy. I didn't really know anything about him, and I didn't know anything about multi-level, so I didn't really pay too much attention. But I just became a big fan of Dr. Wallach. One day I'm working out at the gym, and I say to this guy who's I'm working out with, hey, have you heard of this Dead Doctors Don't Lie? He says, yeah, I know Dr. Wallach. I'm like, what? You know Dr. Wallach? By now it's like 1996, 1997. I said, would you can you introduce me to this guy? He said, sure. So one day I'm sitting there in my lab, a little knock on the door, and I had a big glass window there, and I see my friend Russ, and there's a little guy with a little mustache, and that turns out it's Dr. Joel Wallach. And him and I became fast friends, and because I'd listened to his tape about 20 times or 25 times, I sounded like him. And he asked me if I wanted to do his radio show. And I was like, heck yeah, I want to do his radio show. And the more I got involved with Dr. Wallach, the more I got involved with Youngevity, the more I realized that not only was this guy eloquent and educational and entertaining, but he was a visionary and an absolute genius. And the stuff that this guy knew, nobody knew about, involving colloidal minerals and the electrical energy of minerals and selenium and the importance of cartilage factors and the importance of glucosamine. These are all things that Dr. Wallach singularly was responsible for bringing to the public consciousness, to the public mind. And then he talked about the idea that you gotta supplement using, you gotta add nutrients into your body using nutritional supplementation, because the soils have been eroded, and when you don't have minerals in the soils, the plants and the animals don't get what they need either. So once you have mineral depletion from the soils, you get a domino effect of nutrient depletion in all the foods that come from the soils, and that means the plants and the animals. And this was Dr. Wallach's brilliance. And as I started to talk to him and work with him, I started to use some of his supplements. I started to change my life, and I already knew about nutritional supplementation. So I became a big-time proponent of everything that Dr. Wallach was doing and of the products that Dr. Wallach was developing. And this was in 1997, and I've been doing it ever since, now 15, going on 16 years.
Whoa, okay. 58 after the hour. Ladies and gentlemen, when we come back from this 1 minute, 10-second break, I want to know, I'm selfish, I want to know what pharmacist Ben Fuchs takes and how he would stop an unruly child from being unruly. We'll find that out in this next segment. Stay tuned to the Power Hour. Welcome back to the Power Hour. Thank you for joining us. Pharmacist Ben Fuchs is our guest today, and I got to tell you, I have a lot of respect for this man. Not that he's a pharmacist, but that he is a person who understands the folly of much of pharmacy. If you would like to get involved in his organization, you can. If you are a pharmacist out there and you'd like to get involved with him, or you want to be involved in this business of Youngevity, the phone number is 855-252-TEAM, 855-252-8326, or go to powerourteam.com if you're interested in any of the items we're going to talk about, because I selfishly want to know what is the protocol that you take every day. You may add other things I know to it or delete some things sometimes. What is your basic protocol, please, Ben?
One mixed with fat. That's the first thing you want to do. There's two ways you can...
Wait a minute, we didn't hear what you said.
Protein and fat together, but there's two kinds of nutrients. There's macronutrients and there's micronutrients. Macro meaning nutrients that you need in large quantities, grams or ounces. Micronutrients meaning nutrients that you need in micrograms or milligram amounts, smaller amounts. Your macronutrients are protein, fats, carbohydrates, fiber, and water, and they're all important. But protein and fat are incredibly important, and unless you're concentrating on protein intake, for the most part, most people are not going to get the amount of protein that they need, especially if they're cooking their protein, especially if they're overcooking their protein, which is why you want to use protein powders. You want about 0.5 gram to a gram of protein powder per pound of body weight. That means if you weigh 150 pounds, you're looking around 75 to 150 grams of protein. Now, an egg is going to get you maybe 7 to 10 grams of protein. If it's cooked, you're going to start to lose some of that protein value to the degree you cook it. Chicken breast will give you around 25 grams of protein. Again, if you cook it, you're going to lose a certain degree of that protein value. That's why the best way to get your protein is going to be in cold processed protein powders, especially whey protein. And you always want to mix your protein with essential fatty acids, with a certain kind of fat. Protein and fat are incredibly filling. The brain has satiety or satisfaction hormones that are keyed to the intake of protein and fat. That's why nobody binges on protein and nobody binges on fat, or on good fat, or an essential fatty acid kind of fat. So once you get yourself enough protein and fat, that immediately will kill much of your calorie cravings. For many millions of years, the human body, when it got calories, it got nutrients. So
okay, I'm afraid we're going to run out of time.
Okay, good.
Okay,
so protein and fat
for children and for adults.
Yes,
go ahead.
Start your day off with protein and fat. Essential fatty acid fat is what I'm talking about. That is omega-6s and omega-3s. And then you want to make sure that you're getting the right kind of carbohydrates. The right kind of carbohydrates are vegetables. And I did not say fruits and vegetables. I said vegetables. Fruits today have been genetically modified to be super-duper sweet, and they're very, very problematic. If you're going to do fruits, do berries or small fruits, and you can make a smoothie with protein and a little bit of frozen berries and essential fatty acid liquid. It's incredibly filling and satisfying. Fiber, you want about I like to grind up flax seeds in a little coffee grinder, and I get about 2 or 3 tablespoons, even up to 4 tablespoons of fiber. I'll throw those in a smoothie as well. Make sure you're drinking half a gallon to a gallon of water all day long. Sip on water or nutrient water, which we'll talk about here in a second. And there's the micronutrients, which are your vitamins and your minerals, and a few accessory nutrients, which we can talk about here in a sec. Your vitamins come in 2 varieties, your fat-soluble vitamins and your water-soluble vitamins. Your B and C, which are your water vitamins, you need all day long because you will pee them out. If you do them just once a day, but by the end of the day, you're not going to have what you need. So you want to sip on B-complex water and vitamin C water. This is why I like the Beyond Tangy Tangerine from Youngevity so well, because it's loaded, absolutely loaded with these water-soluble nutrients. Sip on them all day long, and you asked about children. It's perfect for kids because it tastes delicious. You can sprinkle some Beyond Tangy Tangerine, by the way, in your smoothie, and it will improve the taste of your smoothie, plus it will add nutrients. But sip on that Beyond Tangy Tangerine all day long. It'll get you your vitamin C and your B-complex, and you'll also get small amounts of your fatty vitamins. The fatty vitamins are tricky, and your essential fatty acids are also tricky because fat malabsorption and fat malabsorption syndrome is a big problem.
So the 90 for Life pack.
90 for Life pack.
The basic one.
Yes. The 3 nutrients everybody needs: essential fatty acids, a multiple vitamin, and probiotics.
We're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, thank you, thank you.